Morning all. All right, news of the day video to start things off today for your Sunday, July the 9th. Starting off with Nils Hoglander, signing a 2-year extension with the Vancouver Canucks. It has a cap hit of $1.1 million. There are very divided arguments for and against Nils Hoglander amongst Canucks fans. There are some who aren't big fans. There are some that are. For me personally, I think he's a good, solid third-line player, but if he's not on the third line, I don't know if I see that much top six upside there. And I don't think you're doing him any favors by playing him on the fourth line and not playing him enough. So we'll see how things go for Hoglander this coming season. I don't think the Canucks are done. At least I think they want to do something regarding some players. There's even speculation about whether or not Tyler Myers has already got his signing bonus early. But at any rate, Hoglander's signed. It is a $1.1 million cap hit. $1 million this year, $1.2 million next year. So it averages out to $1.1 million. And all the best to Hoglander. Hopefully he makes it. So I want to talk about this deal, too, with Philadelphia Flyers prospect goaltender Ivan Fedotov. So remember last summer, Fedotov signed with the Flyers, and then the Russians said, wait a minute, he's got a falsified military service record here. He has to serve time in the military. And then we didn't hear anything after that. But apparently he's completed his military service. So after a full year, they've let him out. And he has signed a deal with CSKA Moscow. Now, signing in the KHL is perfectly fine if he wants to do that. However, he does have a contract with the Flyers. So he signed that one-year deal. Because he didn't come over, the Flyers were able to take that contract and shift it to this year. You can do that with certain players under certain conditions. Of course, we see that with CHL players all the time. They sign their three-year entry-level contract, and then it ends up actually taking effect the following season because either they don't play in the NHL or they don't play enough games for that first year of the contract to be burned, right? So for Fedotov, this gets complicated because there is no current relationship between the NHL and the KHL. The KHL is under no obligation that I can find to acknowledge that contract. And they've already said that's not a valid contract. The contract, and I'm guessing their argument is Fedotov signed that last year. He signed it under conditions where he probably should have been doing his military service. And there's been talk since then about whether or not there's other NHL players that might have cards that indicate they've been in the military when they haven't. And so that's been a conversation point for a while, right? About whether or not other Russian players might have this same thing happen to them where they're forced into military service. So he was going to come over and play with the Flyers. He ends up not being able to. Now he's signed in the KHL. The Flyers still own his rights. However, he's 27 next summer, and that's when you're an unrestricted free agent, meaning the Flyers would lose the rights to him and he'd be free to sign anywhere in the NHL if he chose to play in the NHL that he wanted to. So this is kind of a little bit of a curiosity to me because I don't know what's going to happen. If I had to predict, I'd say he's playing for Moscow. That's where he signed. That's where he wants to play. I think that's where he's going to play. I can't see the KHL letting him out of his contract to come over and play for the Flyers for a year, unless they were going to do it as like a good faith gesture, but I don't see that happening. So it's going to be a very interesting rest of the summer for the Flyers on some level if they want Fedotov to be one of their top two goaltenders. Remember, they picked up Cal Peterson. Currently, he's listed as the most likely backup to Carter Hart. But it's an interesting situation that the Flyers find themselves in here. We'll see if lawyers get involved or if the NHL directly tries to do anything about this. But if a player wants to play in Moscow and they want to stay there, I don't think there's much the NHL can do about it other than furrow their brow and get upset. And again, I understand that contracts are legal, everything, but where does that go to court and how do you enforce it? So even if you get like an American judge say, well, this is a good contract. Okay. KHL just goes, no, we don't like it. We don't recognize it. There you go. All right, so let me know your thoughts. What do you think is going to happen with this? Again, I think he's going to play with CSKA Moscow, and Philadelphia is kind of out of luck on that. Cale Fleury's avoided arbitration, so we're going to start seeing more of this over the coming week. He signs a 2-year extension with the Seattle Kraken for $800,000 per season, so not a ton of money. Remember, the minimum is now $775,000, but still, they get it done. It's a 2-year deal for Cale Fleury, and it's one less headache for NHL GMs in terms of arbitration cases. One interesting signing, and I wanted to report this here that I had seen took place. Josiah Slavin, the younger brother of Jacob Slavin, signs a 1-year deal with the Toronto Marlies. So it's not the Toronto Maple Leafs; it's an AHL contract. But if they could get any kind of offensive upside out of Slavin at some point, defensively he's a Slavin. Like, he's pretty good. He's definitely, you can tell he's Jacob's brother, but offensively not as great. So we'll see what happens with that and whether or not he works himself into getting a contract with the Maple Leafs, because we've seen that guys sign AHL deals, and at some point, whether it's during the season or maybe it's after the season's done, the parent team, in this case the Maple Leafs, say, you know what, we really like this Josiah Slavin, there might be something here. Yeah, we'll give him an NHL contract or a two-way deal, and then he makes more money out of that. But yeah, so that'll be an interesting one to see how he looks if he's at Toronto Maple Leafs training camp. Because even though he's got a Marlies contract, I would think he'd be able to go to the Maple Leafs training camp. If not, he goes to the Marlies training camp and probably has it almost to himself to start things out. Pavel Novak. So Pavel Novak missed all of last season recovering from Hodgkin's lymphoma. He was actually declared cancer-free in October of last year. Was back on skates in January, and now it appears he'll be ready to go for training camp. And when I hear Hodgkin's lymphoma, I do think of Mario Lemieux. When Mario Lemieux had Hodgkin's lymphoma, there was discussion about how many years he might miss, and is he going to be the same? He came back and played that season. It was insane. So Novak missing an entire season sounds more like what normal humans would go through. He is cancer-free. That's great. And so he is very likely to play for Iowa this year, and he's excited to do it. He's got all the right mindset, and again, he's been skating and working out and getting himself back into shape. That reporting from Joe Smith. So here's to hoping that Novak surprises maybe at training camp again. Minnesota, with their cap situation, having young players that can come up and play, that's really important. But if he starts the season in Iowa, the Iowa Wild, I think he'll be well taken care of there as well. So Winnipeg Jets, with their development camp, Rutger McGroarty standing out for a couple of reasons. First off, he's a talented forward, and he is a big part of the future of the Winnipeg Jets. The other thing that's interesting is apparently during this past week with the development camp, he was attached at the hip to Colby Barlow. They took over the team's Instagram account. There were photos taken together. There's really an image showing up now with Winnipeg of what their future will look like with their forward group. And it's going to be fun to see. You've got Perfetti, you've got McGroarty, you've got Barlow. Now, of course, personally, I mean, his name's Rutger McGroarty. I want him in the NHL as soon as possible. However, McGroarty, to his benefit, and honestly, this is great, very, very patient, and basically saying that, he was finding his way in the NCAA in his freshman year. He is still, working on his shooting. He's working on various skill sets, and he doesn't want to debut for the Winnipeg Jets until he's ready to be a star in the league, until he feels like he is ready to really, take control and turn some heads. That's a great, mature attitude from a player that when drafted in the first round, I can totally see why players would sign and want to get their contracts or get their careers going right away, get those big contracts done. And McGroarty is like, no, I want to wait my turn and make sure that when I come in, I can be really, really good. So for the Jets going through everything they're going through this summer and, all this speculation about what's going to happen with Hellebuck, with Scheifele, they've already, parted ways with Wheeler. Dubois has been traded. It's nice to see these kids excited to play in Winnipeg and see that the future could be pretty bright for the Jets as well, but we shall see. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.